Have you ever held on to a feeling so dark, so corrosive, that it becomes a part of your DNA? A rage so deep you can taste it like copper in your mouth? I have. For 18 years, I carried mine. It was a cold, patient companion. It lived in the silence after my little brother's laugh faded. It grew in the empty space where my sister should have been. Everyone told me to let it go, to forgive, to move on. But I wasn't interested in moving on. I was interested in justice. And the target of my justice was my own mother. This is not a story about a happy family torn apart by tragedy. This is a story about a tragedy caused by a family, and how I, the forgotten son, made sure the architect of that nightmare faced a judgment day of my own, if you've ever felt powerless, if you've ever been betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you, and you dreamed of the day the scales would finally balance, then you need to hear this story. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we're about to dive into one of the most psychologically complex and emotionally charged revenge stories I've ever covered. This is a masterclass in patience. Strap in. My origin story when my mother was written in rejection ink. At 2 years old, my brother Mark was born. I was a typical toddler, jealous, acting out, but I learned. My grandparents taught me about love, about protection. I became the big brother. I adored him, but to my mother, I was already obsolete, a demonic hellspawn. She threw me away, sending me to live with my grandparents. Her new model was here, and I was discarded. Imagine that. Your first core memory is being deemed unlovable by the one person whose love is supposed to be unconditional. The family expanded. Half-siblings, Alicia and Sam. A new stepfather. And when I hit 13, full of confusing teenage fire, my stepfather decided his parenting tool of choice was his fists. Any spark of individuality, any question, was met with violence. And my mother? She'd just watch. Her eyes would glaze over. I wasn't her son in those moments. I was a problem being neutralized. The worst was a bookshelf. A heavy, solid oak thing packed with books. During one beating, it toppled onto me. The weight was crushing, literal and metaphorical. Lying there, gasping. The dusty smell of old paper in my nose. I felt something in me fracture. Not break, but harden. This was mistake one. The first seed of future revenge was planted in that dark, painful soil. But I was a wounded animal. I knew I had to wait. The chores weren't chores. They were child labor. At 10, 11 years old, I was on roofs cleaning gutters, climbing trees with saws. This wasn't teaching responsibility. It was negligence with a side of danger. Then came the day that hollowed out our world. I was 14. Mark was 12. We were tasked with watching 2-year-old Alicia. A lazy afternoon, the drone of a video game in the background, then a cold spike of dread. Where's Alicia? Panic. Pure, unadulterated terror. A frantic scramble through the house. My dad burning his hand on the stove. And then a scream. A sound that doesn't come from a human throat, but from a soul being ripped in half. My mother's scream. We found her on the deck by the pool. A small, still form. CPR. Sirens. A blur of hospital lights and hushed, terrible voices. They turned off the machines that night. My bright, tiny half-sister was gone. The guilt was a black hole, sucking in me and Mark. But my grandparents, anchors in the storm, told us the truth. This is not on you. It was on the adults. The negligent adults. Child Protective Services came. My father tried to save us, one temporary custody. But my grandparents, in their tragic loyalty to their daughter, fought to return us to her. And they won. Mistake 2. A child was dead, and the system returned us to the source of the poison. I tried to live. By 18, I was stretching toward a future. High school graduation on the horizon. Mark was 15. He'd gotten into a fight, broken his finger, had surgery. Pins, screws, heavy painkillers. My mother's one job was to monitor his medication. The day it happened, I knew before I was told. My grandfather picked me up from school, his face a mask of carved stone. We drove home in a silence, so thick I could feel it pressing on my eardrums. Then I saw it, the sight that is now burned onto the back of my eyelids forever. Paramedics, a stretcher, a black, zippered bag. Mark, my brother, my friend, gone. A drug overdose. Because she wasn't watching. Because she never really watched. That was the moment. The fracture from the bookshelf became a canyon. The seed of revenge erupted into a full-grown, venomous tree. My family shattered into sides, my mother's and my father's. I stood with my father. My half-brother Sam was ripped away by CPS, lost to foster care forever. My mother had now caused the death of 2 of my siblings. She had stolen the 3rd. She left me, an only child. The silence in my life was deafening. The rage was the only thing that kept me warm. The patient game was over. The war had begun. My revenge was an explosion. It was a slow, meticulous freezing. My grandfather, my kind-hearted best friend, was her new target for manipulation. So I became a saboteur in plain sight. Every time she whispered some need into his ear, I'd challenge her, publicly, in front of them. Why do you need that, Mom? Grandpa, is that really a good idea? I never won, but I watched the irritation crack her mask. I wanted her to snap, to give me a reason. She'd just cry. It wasn't enough. Then, fate handed me a gift. She herniated discs at work, crippling back pain, and my stepfather was jailed. She was vulnerable, in agony, and alone. So, I became the ghost in her medicine cabinet. Her powerful pain pills? I'd hide them, in the flour canister, behind books. Sometimes I'd just throw them away. I'd watch her writhe, pale and sweating, searching frantically. The physical pain I felt from the bookshelf, I returned it to her, tenfold. It culminated perfectly. Hopped up on the meds she did find. She crashed her car. Die. 6 months in jail. When I got that call, I didn't just smile. I laughed. A dry, rasping sound I didn't recognize as my own when she got out. She had nowhere to go. Back to my grandparents' house. My house. I turned her room into mine during her absence. My old room was a game room. She got the couch. An old, sprung couch with metal bars that dug into her destroyed back. Every morning, I'd make my coffee and watch the grimace of pain as she tried to sit up. That was my sunrise. Then, she escalated. She conned my grandparents into buying her illegal painkillers. I begged my grandfather to stop. I warned them all about jail. When they didn't listen, I made an anonymous call to the police. It didn't stick. A rare setback. But I was adapting, still hiding her legal meds. A petty, childish torment? Maybe. But sometimes you speak the language your opponent understands. The final act required the most patience. 13 years after Mark's death, I was 31. My grandfather had passed. My grandmother, frail and lost, was entering a retirement home. I had saved every penny from years of work, from inheritances. I was stable. I was leaving. My mother, however, was a ghost of need. She'd blown through every cent. She had nothing. I went for a final visit. My grandmother was packing a small box, her movement slow, and then my mother approached. She had the audacity to wear hope on her face. She looked at me, the son she discarded, abused, and orphaned, and said, "You'll take care of me when Grandma's gone, right? It's your duty as my son." Every beating, every neglectful glance, every scream by a pool, every image of a stretcher, all crystallized in that moment. The 18-year-old tree of revenge bore its final bitter fruit. I stood up, slowly. I looked directly into her eyes. The windows to the soul I found utterly vacant. I let her see every ounce of my hatred, my disgust, my justice. My voice didn't shake. It was cold, clear, and absolute. You get nothing from me. Grandma's going into a retirement home. I'm moving states. You destroyed my life. You took my childhood. You are responsible for the deaths of my siblings. You broke the law. You made everyone's life a living hell. You will be on the street, and you will die alone, and I will laugh. I never loved you, and I never will. You will never see your grandchildren. You will not be at my wedding. You are not my mother. Rot in hell. The air left the room. My grandmother's hand flew to her mouth. And my mother, she didn't just cry. She shattered. The facade, the manipulation, the last vestige of parental authority. It crumbled into dust at her feet. She broke. Completely. In that silence, I felt it. Not happiness. Not joy. A profound, cosmic release. The weight of 18 years. The ghosts of my siblings on my back. It lessened. Just a fraction. But it was enough. That was my revenge. Not violence. Not a grand scheme. It was truth. It was holding up a mirror to a monster and making her see her own reflection for the first time. It was ensuring that the consequences she spent a lifetime avoiding finally landed on her doorstep with nowhere left to run. I took away her future, just as she took away mine. I condemned her to the loneliness she created. In that moment, the powerless child was gone. In his place stood a man who had delivered the only sentence that fit her crimes, a life sentence of utter desolation. Some will say revenge never satisfies, that it eats you alive. For me, it was the opposite. My revenge was the surgery that removed the tumor. It was painful, it was brutal, but it was necessary for survival. It wasn't about her suffering. It was about my freedom. It was about speaking the truth that had been silenced for decades. Sometimes, justice isn't found in a courtroom. It's found in a living room, in a few perfectly chosen words, delivered at the exact right time. If the story of long-game justice resonated with you, if you felt that catharsis in your bones, do me a favor. Smash that like button. It tells the algorithm to share this with others who need to hear it. Let me know in the comments. Could you have waited 18 years for payback? Or what's the most patient revenge you've ever witnessed? Subscribe for more deep dives into the most psychologically complex Reddit stories ever told. Because sometimes the most compelling dramas aren't on screen. They're in the lives of people just like you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.